The golden chandeliers of the Metropole Hotel ballroom cast a warm glow over hundreds of tech executives, investors and reporters. I adjusted the cuffs of my simple dark tailored suit as I moved through the crowd, carrying a small velvet box in my coat pocket. For 3 years, I had kept my true identity hidden from my girlfriend, Chloe Sterling, pretending to be nothing more than an independent, struggling freelance programmer living in a modest apartment. Tonight I was finally going to surprise her by revealing that I was the founder of Vance Enterprises. "Ethan?" A familiar voice called out over the soft ambient jazz music. I turned to see Maya Lin, my lead developer, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. She wore an elegant dark red gown, her sharp eyes scanning my plain suit. "You really wore your off-the-rack suit to your own company's biggest gala?" Maya teased with a light laugh, handing me a glass. "You own the entire building, Ethan." "I like keeping things simple, Maya," I replied with a smile, taking a sip. "Besides, Chloe thinks I scored a cheap guest pass through a friend. I want to see the look on her face when she realizes who I actually am." Maya sighed gently, her tone turning cautious. "I still don't understand why you tested her for 3 years, Ethan. She loves high society. Be careful tonight." "She loves me," I said firmly, though a quiet doubt flickered in my mind. "I'll see you before the keynote address." I pushed through the sea of tuxedos and designer dresses, searching for Chloe. My heart beat faster when I finally spotted her standing near the fountain display. She looked breathtaking in a sparkling gold dress, her blonde hair styled in soft waves. But my smile faded the second I noticed who she was standing with. She was leaning close to Carter Montgomery, a notoriously arrogant venture capitalist known for buying out struggling startups and stripping them of their assets. Carter's arm was resting comfortably around Chloe's waist, and she was laughing brightly at something he said, taking a sip from her crystal glass. A lump formed in my throat, but I forced myself to walk over. "Chloe?" The sound of my voice made her body go rigid. She froze mid-laugh and turned her head. The bright smile vanished instantly from her face, replaced by a look of absolute, icy panic. Her pale blue eyes widened in shock as she took in my simple suit and unstyled hair. "Ethan?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the music. "Hey," I said, stepping closer and offering a warm, hopeful smile. "I told you I'd manage to make it tonight. I wanted to surprise you." Before I could reach out to take her hand, Carter stepped in front of her, raising an eyebrow in disgust as he looked me up and down. "Who is this guy, Chloe?" Carter asked smoothly, taking a slow sip of his champagne. "An uninvited guest? Or did one of the server staff wander off from the catering kitchen?" I stared at Chloe, waiting for her to step forward, to take my hand, to introduce me as her boyfriend of 3 years. I waited for her to tell Carter that I belonged here. Instead, Chloe took a sharp step backward, putting even more distance between us. Her expression hardened into a cold, contemptuous mask. "I have no idea who he is, Carter," Chloe said loudly, her voice dripping with cold indifference. She didn't even blink. "He's probably just a confused fan or some low-level contractor who snuck past security." The words hit me like a physical punch to the chest. The noise of the ballroom seemed to fade into a dull hum. "Chloe, what are you saying?" "It's me, Ethan." "Look, pal," Carter sneered, taking a step toward me and placing a hand on my chest to push me back. "The lady said she doesn't know you. You're bothering my date. Get lost before I have security throw you out on the street where you belong." Chloe didn't look at my face. She kept her eyes glued to Carter's diamond cufflinks, her fingers tightening around his arm. "Please, Carter, let's just move away from him. People are starting to stare, and I don't want trash ruining our night." "Trash." The word escaped my lips in a raspy whisper. 3 years of shared dinners, late-night conversations, promises of a future, and shared dreams crushed under her heel in less than 3 seconds. "You heard her, buddy," Carter laughed, turning his back on me and guiding Chloe toward the VIP lounge. "Go find someone in your own budget bracket." I stood frozen in the middle of the crowded ballroom, watching my girlfriend walk away on the arm of another man. The velvet box in my coat pocket felt suddenly impossibly heavy, a bitter reminder of a future that had never truly existed. She hadn't just denied knowing me to save face in front of a wealthy investor. She had erased 3 years of our lives without a single second of hesitation. "Ethan?" Maya's voice cut through my frozen thoughts as she appeared at my side, her face pale with anger. I saw what happened from across the room. "Are you okay?" I took a slow, deep breath, pulling my gaze away from Chloe's gold dress disappearing into the VIP section. The pain in my chest hardened into a cold, crystal-clear realization. Her love was never real. It was a transaction built entirely on perceived status, wealth, and power. "I'm fine, Maya," I said, my voice steadying as a cold calm settled over my mind. "In fact, I've never seen things more clearly." "What are we going to do?" Maya asked, her eyes flashing with protective fury. "We stick to the plan," I replied softly, touching the velvet box in my pocket one last time before letting it drop. "Let her play her game for a little longer. The keynote address is in 1 hour, isn't it?" "Yes," Maya nodded. "Good," I whispered. "She wants status. I'm going to give her a front row seat to reality." The cool night air hit my face as I pushed open the heavy glass doors leading to the deserted balcony. Down below, the city lights flickered in silence, completely unaware of the wreckage inside my chest. I gripped the cold stone railing, staring out into the dark. "I thought I'd find you out here," Maya said, her heels clicking softly against the marble tiles as she walked out to join me. "I needed some air," I admitted, my voice flat. 3 years, Maya. I gave her 3 years of my life, and she acted like I was a parasite trying to steal her coat. "She's a fool, Ethan," Maya said angrily, leaning against the railing next to me. "She thinks Carter Montgomery is her ticket to the top floor, but she has no idea what he's actually doing behind closed doors." I turned my head to look at her. "What do you mean?" "Our security team flagged a suspicious pitch deck submission 2 hours ago," Maya explained, her eyes narrowing. "Carter's firm submitted a confidential proposal to our advisory board, claiming his team developed a quantum encryption module. Ethan, it's a direct clone of our early prototype. He stole our code through an external contractor." A bitter laugh escaped my throat. "So Carter is trying to sell my own software back to my own board?" "Exactly," Maya nodded. "He's using that stolen prototype to pitch a hostile takeover of Vance Enterprises tonight. He thinks the owner is an elusive recluse who won't show up to defend the company." "He has no idea I am the owner," I muttered, shaking my head. "He thinks he's playing chess against a ghost." Before Maya could respond, the balcony door creaked open again. The sharp tap of high heels echoed against the stone floor. I turned to see Chloe stepping out onto the balcony, her glittering gold dress catching the moonlight. She looked around nervously, ensuring no high-profile guests had followed her outside, before locking her cold blue eyes onto mine. "Maya, give us a minute," Chloe demanded, her tone laced with arrogance as she crossed her arms. Maya looked at me, her jaw tense. "Do you want me to stay, Ethan?" "No, it's fine, Maya," I said quietly. "Wait for me inside near the main stage." Maya shot Chloe a sharp, disdainful glare before spinning on her heel and slipping back through the glass doors. The moment the doors shut, Chloe's composed expression shattered into pure fury. She marched right up to me, her cheeks flushed with anger. "What on earth are you doing here, Ethan?" she hissed, keeping her voice low so it wouldn't carry. "Do you have any idea how much effort I put into getting invited to this gala?" "I came here to see you, Chloe," I said, keeping my tone dead even. "I thought you'd be happy to share this night with me." "Share this night with you?" she scoffed, letting out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "Look at you. You're wearing a cheap suit you probably bought off a clearance rack. You're a struggling freelance programmer who can barely pay rent on a tiny apartment. Is that all I am to you?" I asked, looking directly into her eyes, searching for a single trace of the woman I thought I loved. "A dollar sign? In this world, status is everything, Ethan," she snapped back, leaning closer. "Carter is a managing partner at a top venture capital firm. He introduced me to tech billionaires tonight. He can change my life, and you're standing in the middle of the ballroom looking like a lost puppy." "You lied to his face," I reminded her softly. "You told him you didn't even know me." "Because you embarrassed me," she yelled, her voice trembling with frustration. "If Carter knew I was dating a nobody like you, he would have dropped me instantly. You were ruining my big night, Ethan. I worked too hard to build an image to let a low-level coder tear it down in 10 seconds. So 3 years meant nothing to you," I stated flatly. "I need a man with a future, Ethan, not a man who spends 16 hours a day writing code for pocket change," she said coldly, taking a step back and straightening her dress. "I want you to leave. Right now." "You want me to leave my own? I mean, leave the gala?" I caught myself just in time. "Yes. Leave before Carter sees you again," she ordered, pointing toward the side exit stairs. "If you ruin my chances with Carter, I will never forgive you. Go back to your apartment and stay there. I'll come pack my things from your place tomorrow." I stared at her for a long, silent moment. The final thread holding my heartbreak together snapped, replaced by an unshakable, icy resolve. She wanted a man with power. She wanted status. I was going to give her exactly what she asked for, but not in the way she imagined. "All right, Chloe," I said, a slow, emotionless smile forming on my lips. "If that's what you truly want, I won't interfere with your night." "Good," she breathed out a sigh of relief, turning back toward the glass doors. "At least you're smart enough to know when you're out of your league." She pushed open the door and slipped back into the warm, golden light of the ballroom, gliding back toward Carter like a moth to a flame. I stood on the balcony alone, pulling my phone from my pocket. I dialed Maya's direct line. "Ethan?" Maya answered on the first ring. "Is everything okay?" "Tell Dr. Ford to move the keynote address up by 15 minutes, I instructed, my voice dropping an octave into pure authority. "And make sure Carter Montgomery and Chloe Sterling have front row seats." "Consider it done, boss," Maya replied with a smirk. "Are you coming inside?" "Yes," I whispered, looking down at the small velvet box in my hand before tossing it into the trash receptacle near the door. "It's time to take off the mask." I stood in the dim, warm shadows near the mahogany bar of the VIP lounge, holding a crystal glass of water. From across the room, I watched Carter Montgomery holding court near the velvet lounge couches, surrounded by 4 high-profile angel investors. Chloe sat right beside him on the leather sofa, clinging to his arm like a trophy, nodding eagerly at every single word that tumbled out of his mouth. "We are finalizing the paperwork tonight, gentlemen," Carter boasted loudly, taking a deep drink of single malt whiskey. "My firm is executing a full, aggressive acquisition of Vance Enterprises before the end of the quarter." "An acquisition?" one elderly investor asked, raising an eyebrow in skepticism. "I was under the impression that Vance Enterprises was entirely privately held by a founder who refuses to sell." "Every founder has a price, Arthur," Carter sneered, slapping his hand against his knee. "The guy is a paranoid hermit who doesn't know how to scale a business. My legal team found a leverage point in their early software architecture. Once we hit them with our patent claim tonight, he'll have no choice but to sell his voting shares for pennies on the dollar." Chloe beamed with pride, leaning into Carter's shoulder. "Carter has been working night and day on this deal. He's the most brilliant strategist in the industry." Standing right next to me, Maya let out a soft, contemptuous chuckle. "He really believes his own lies, doesn't he? Does he know his lead bank froze his firm's credit lines 2 hours ago?" "No," I replied under my breath, watching Chloe laugh at another one of Carter's arrogant jokes. "He thinks his stolen pitch deck will trick our advisory board into bailing out his bankrupt firm. He's using our company's reputation to cover up his own insolvency." "It's pathetic," Maya whispered. "And Chloe has no idea she's riding a sinking ship." "Excuse me? Ethan?" a gentle, anxious voice called out from behind us. I turned around to see Victoria Sterling, Chloe's younger sister, standing near the marble pillar. Unlike Chloe's glittering gold dress, Victoria wore a modest, simple black cocktail dress. Her eyes were filled with genuine worry and deep embarrassment as she looked at me. "Victoria," I said softly, stepping away from Maya. "I didn't know you were here tonight." "Chloe gave me a guest pass at the last minute," Victoria said, her voice shaking slightly as she glanced over at her sister across the room. "Ethan, I saw what happened near the fountain earlier. I saw how she treated you in front of Carter." "She made her choice, Victoria," I said flatly. "You don't need to apologize for her." "I have to, Ethan," Victoria insisted, taking a small step closer and gripping her purse tightly. "I am so incredibly sorry. I couldn't believe my eyes when she denied knowing you. You've been so good to her for 3 years. You paid for her apartment deposit, you supported her when she lost her job, and she tossed you aside like trash." "Status is very important to her," I said, a cold edge creeping into my tone. "More important than loyalty." "It's worse than you think," Victoria confessed, dropping her voice to a desperate whisper. "Ethan, she's completely blinded by him. Last week, Carter convinced her to liquidate her entire personal savings account, over $80,000, and transfer it into his firm's offshore holding account. He told her it was a pre-IPO investment opportunity that would make her a millionaire." I froze, looking back at Chloe, who was currently clinking her champagne glass against Carter's. "She gave him her life savings?" "Every single cent," Victoria nodded sadly, tears welling in her eyes. "She even took out a personal loan to buy that designer dress she's wearing tonight, just to look like she belongs on his arm." I tried to warn her, Ethan. I begged her to look at his financial disclosures, but she screamed at me and said I was just jealous that she was marrying a billionaire. A sudden, sharp sting of pity pierced my heart. 3 years of my life had been spent protecting Chloe, shielding her from stress and trying to give her a stable future. Now she had handed her entire life over to a fraudster just to parade around a ballroom for one night. "Can't you talk to her, Ethan?" Victoria pleaded, touching my sleeve lightly. "If you tell her the truth about Carter, if you help her?" I looked down at Victoria's hand, then slowly looked across the room at Chloe, who was currently whispering into Carter's ear while glaring disgustedly in my direction from across the lounge. She caught my eye for a brief second and mouthed the words, "Get out." The momentary surge of pity withered away, turning into pure, unyielding stone. "I can't save her, Victoria," I said firmly, stepping back so her hand fell away. She made a conscious decision to step on me to reach what she thought was the top. She chose the illusion over the reality. "Ethan, please?" Victoria whispered. "Take care of yourself, Victoria," I said gently. "You are a good person, but your sister made her bed. Tonight she has to lie in it." Maya stepped up beside me, checking her smartwatch with a sharp grin. "The board members just took their seats in the main auditorium, Ethan. Dr. Ford is at the side of the stage waiting for your signal." "Is Carter's team in position?" I asked. "Carter just had his assistant reserve 2 front-row center seats," Maya reported, her eyes glittering with anticipation. "He brought his personal photographer so they can capture the moment he claims credit for our quantum module." "Perfect," I said, handing my empty water glass to a passing waiter. "Let's not keep my new business partners waiting." I walked past Victoria, leaving the VIP lounge behind. Carter thought he was executing a hostile takeover, and Chloe thought she was stepping into a life of luxury. They had built a mountain out of greed, lies, and stolen code, completely unaware that the ground beneath their feet was about to give way. The heavy oak doors of the grand auditorium swung open, pouring hundreds of eager attendees into the dimly lit, tiered theater. I walked toward the backstage wing, keeping low beneath the shadowy overhang of the side balconies. "Are you ready for this, Ethan?" Maya whispered, adjusting the lapel microphone pinned inside my jacket collar. "I've been ready for 3 years, Maya," I replied quietly. "Is Dr. Ford set?" "He's adjusting his notes right now," she smiled, pointing toward the stage wing, and looked down at row 1. I glanced through the dark gap in the velvet stage curtains. Right in the center of the very first row sat Carter Montgomery, sitting tall in his tuxedo. Beside him, Chloe adjusted her sparkling gold dress, beaming proudly as she leaned over to whisper into his ear. She held a glass of champagne in one hand, scanning the stage like she already owned the building. "He actually believes he's getting invited on stage to sign a merger," Maya chuckled under her breath. "Let him enjoy his illusion for 2 more minutes," I said, stepping back into the shadows as the house lights dimmed to a deep blue. A hush fell over the packed theater as the spotlight snapped on, illuminating the center pod of the stage. Dr. Harrison Ford walked slowly out into the bright white beam. The crowd erupted into loud applause for the legendary tech elder statesman. He raised both hands, smiling warmly until the auditorium settled back into absolute silence. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the annual Vanguard Summit," Dr. Ford began, his deep, resonant voice echoing through the massive speakers. "Tonight, we are not merely celebrating another year of incremental tech updates. Tonight, we unveil an architecture that will fundamentally rewrite the rules of global cybersecurity." Down in the front row, Carter grinned widely, nudging Chloe's arm with his elbow. Chloe clapped her hands delicately, looking up at Carter like he was a god. "4 months, Dr. Ford continued, gesturing toward the giant projection screen behind him. "Certain venture firms have claimed to be developing quantum encryption modules. Some have even floated rumors of acquiring the proprietary patents behind this breakthrough." Carter leaned forward in his seat, smirking, already beginning to unbutton his tuxedo jacket as if preparing to stand up and bow. However, Dr. Ford's voice grew stern, his eyes sweeping across the audience. "Misinformation in this industry dies tonight. Vance Enterprises does not sell its core architecture. Nor does it partner with predatory capital firms." Carter's smile froze. He blinked, his posture stiffening instantly. Beside him, Chloe looked up at him, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What is he talking about, Carter?" Chloe whispered loudly enough for the front row to hear. "You said you own the exclusive rights." "Shut up, Chloe," Carter hissed through gritted teeth, his eyes glued to the stage. "He's just setting up the introduction." "And now," Dr. Ford declared, stepping aside as the central spotlight widened, "it is my distinct honor to introduce the true architect of this quantum encryption revolution. The brilliant mind, sole founder, and absolute owner of Vance Enterprises, Mr. Ethan Vance." The entire auditorium exploded into thunderous applause. I stepped out from behind the velvet curtain, walking straight into the center of the brilliant white spotlight. My simple, dark-tailored suit caught the light. I didn't rush. I walked with slow, deliberate confidence right to the edge of the stage, looking directly down into row 1. The moment my eyes locked onto Chloe's, the color completely drained from her face. Her lips parted in shock, her glass of champagne slipping through her numb fingers and shattering against the hardwood floor. "Ethan?" she gasped, her voice lost beneath the roar of the clapping crowd. Carter stared at me, his eyes wide, his jaw dropping open in total disbelief. No, that's impossible. That's the loser from the lobby. That's a low-level coder." "Ethan?" Chloe repeated, stumbling to her feet in the front row, her hands clutching her golden dress as her entire world shattered into pieces. You own Vance Enterprises?" I adjusted the microphone on the podium, looking down at her with complete, unshakable calm. "Good evening, everyone," I spoke into the mic, my voice carrying clearly over the sound system. "Thank you for coming tonight." Chloe stood frozen in the aisle, surrounded by cheering executives and flashing media cameras. The realization hit her with the weight of a falling mountain. The man she had ridiculed as a struggling freelancer, the man she had thrown away for status, the man she had denied knowing just 2 hours ago, was the multi-billionaire founder sitting at the absolute top of the industry. "Ethan, please?" Chloe cried out, taking a desperate step toward the stage stairs, her eyes filled with sudden horrified tears. "Ethan, look at me." Carter grabbed her arm, trying to pull her back down into her seat, his face red with panic. "Chloe, sit down. You're making a scene. Is this true? Is he your boyfriend?" "He was." Chloe screamed back at Carter, her voice cracking as tears ran down her face. "He was my boyfriend for 3 years. You told me he was a nobody." Carter yelled, realization dawning on him as well. "You told me he was a stalker." "I didn't know." Chloe wept bitterly, turning back to the stage and reaching her hands out toward me. "Ethan, please. I didn't know it was you." I looked at her from the podium, holding her gaze for 3 long seconds. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile with malicious joy. I simply looked at her with total indifference, exactly as she had looked at me near the fountain. As I was saying, I continued smoothly into the microphone, ignoring her completely as the presentation screen flared to life behind me. Vance Enterprises was built on truth, loyalty, and absolute integrity. Values that cannot be bought, stolen, or faked. Chloe sank back into her seat, burying her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably as the entire room focused on the screen behind me. Her golden trap had closed and she was locked inside it. I tapped the podium mic, my gaze remaining fixed on the front row where Carter sat trembling and Chloe wept into her hands. The digital display behind me illuminated the grand theater with intricate schematics of our system. "Tonight, Vance Enterprises releases our quantum encryption platform to the global market," I announced, my voice echoing with crisp authority. "However, before we proceed with our live demonstration, there is a serious matter of integrity that requires public clarification." Whispers rippled through the audience. Carter straightened up, his face drained of color as he gripped the armrests of his seat. "Over the past 48 hours, I continued, pressing a button on the podium, a fraudulent investment deck was circulated to several angel investors present in this room. This deck claims that Montgomery Capital holds co-ownership of our core architecture." The large screen shifted, displaying side-by-side comparisons of our encrypted code and Carter's submitted pitch deck. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. "As you can see," I said calmly, "this is a direct, unauthorized copy of our early prototype. It was stolen through an external contractor and presented to investors to secure millions in fraudulent loans." "That's a lie," Carter roared, jumping to his feet in the front row, his face turning a deep, angry red. "This is a setup. My firm developed that module independently." "Sit down, Carter," Dr. Ford said sternly, stepping up to the secondary microphone. "The digital signatures on those files originate directly from your private servers. We have already verified the audit trail." The heavy double doors at the back of the auditorium clicked open. 4 uniformed law enforcement officers and 2 federal regulators walked down the center aisle, their boots heavy against the floor. "Carter Montgomery?" the lead agent called out, stopping at the edge of row 1. "You are being detained under investigation for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and grand larceny." "No. Stay back from me." Carter panicked, stepping back into the row and knocking over a chair. "I didn't steal anything. I didn't write that pitch deck." Chloe looked up through her swollen red eyes, trembling violently as the officers surrounded their row. Carter, what is happening? You told me you owned this. Shut up, you idiot. Carter spat, turning on Chloe with vicious fury as the lead officer grabbed his arm to handcuff him. Officers, listen to me. She's the one who gave me those files. Chloe Sterling brought me the internal documentation from Ethan's apartment. Chloe gasped, her jaw dropping in total horror. What? Carter, that's a complete lie. I didn't even know Ethan was the founder. I never touched his files. She was desperate for cash. Carter shouted, struggling against the cuffs as the officers secured his hands behind his back. She came to my office 3 weeks ago with a drive. She told me her boyfriend was a freelance coder who had proprietary encryption files. She sold them to me to secure an offshore holding account. I didn't. I swear I didn't. Chloe screamed, hysterically bursting into tears as she backed away toward the stage steps. Ethan, please tell them. I didn't steal from you. You know I didn't know anything about your work. I stepped out from behind the podium and walked slowly to the edge of the stage, looking down at the chaotic scene. Maya stood near the wing, holding a tablet containing our internal audit logs. It doesn't matter who pulled the files, Carter, I said quietly into my lapel mic, my voice steady over the speakers. The access logs show the data was extracted using an admin key that was compromised 6 months ago through an external server your firm managed. You committed the breach yourself. You ruined me, Vance. Carter yelled, his voice echoing off the high ceilings as the officers began dragging him down the aisle toward the exit. You set this whole thing up. You ruined yourself when you chose to steal instead of build, I replied coldly. The second officer turned his attention to Chloe, who was cowering near the stage railing, clutching her soaked designer dress. Miss Sterling, you are named as an associate in Montgomery Capital's offshore filings. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding wire fraud. No, please. I don't know anything about finance. Chloe sobbed hysterically, looking up at me with raw, pathetic desperation. Ethan, please save me. Tell them I'm innocent. I love you, Ethan. I was just confused. He lied to me. You told me 2 hours ago that you had no idea who I was, Chloe, I said softly, looking directly into her eyes. You told Carter I was trash and that I belonged on the street. I was wrong. I didn't mean it, she wailed as the officer gently but firmly grabbed her arm, guiding her toward the aisle. I was just trying to fit in. Please, Ethan. Don't let them take me. You liquidated your own savings to invest in a stolen empire, I said, my tone completely devoid of anger or warmth. You stepped on me to reach what you thought was status. Now you have to face the reality you built. Ethan. Ethan. Her desperate screams faded down the hallway as the guards led her away alongside Carter, the heavy auditorium doors shutting behind them with a loud, final thud. The room fell into an expectant silence. Hundreds of high-profile investors, executives, and journalists stared up at me, waiting to see how I would react. I took a deep breath, adjusted my jacket, and walked back to the central podium, looking out at the crowd with absolute composure. Now, I spoke clearly into the microphone, smiling warmly at the audience, let us begin the live demonstration of Vance Enterprises' quantum platform. The thunderous applause from the auditorium finally died down as the key stakeholders dispersed into the grand lobby for the closing reception. I unpinned the lapel microphone from my suit jacket and handed it to Maya, who gave me a triumphant smile. That presentation was flawless, Ethan, Maya said, her eyes shining with admiration. The board unanimously approved our global expansion plan, and 2 international tech groups signed intent letters on the spot. It went exactly as it should have, I replied softly, smoothing my cuffs. Thank you for holding everything together backstage, Maya. You built this company, Ethan, she said warmly. You deserve every bit of this victory. Dr. Harrison Ford joined us, clapping a heavy, supportive hand onto my shoulder. A masterclass in poise and precision, my boy. You defended your company's integrity and exposed a dangerous fraud in a single evening. I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Dr. Ford, I said, offering him a genuine smile. Your opening remarks set the stage perfectly. Nonsense, Dr. Ford chuckled. Your talent speaks for itself. Now, let's step outside and escape the reporters before. Ethan. Please, a desperate, raspy voice shrieked across the marble lobby. I stopped in my tracks. Chloe pushed past 2 security guards, her disheveled gold dress trailing behind her as she stumbled blindly toward me. Her hair was messy, mascara streaked down her red, swollen cheeks, and her heels were completely gone. The federal authorities had released her on temporary signature bail after questioning, pending formal review, but her composure was utterly shattered. Before security could intervene again, she threw herself down onto the cold marble floor directly in front of me, grabbing the hem of my trousers with trembling, desperate fingers. "Ethan, please look at me," she sobbed hysterically, her body shaking with violent gasps for air. "You have to help me. The police said I might be named an accessory to Carter's wire fraud. I don't have money for a defense lawyer, Ethan. They froze my remaining accounts." I stood entirely still, looking down at her from my full height. I didn't pull away, nor did I reach down to comfort her. "Get up, Chloe," I said, my voice dead even and devoid of any anger or heat. "You are making a scene in front of my guests." "I don't care about the scene," she wept, looking up at me with raw, bloodshot eyes full of terror. "I was manipulated, Ethan. Carter lied to me about everything. He tricked me into thinking he was a visionary. He lured me in and I was so stupid, so incredibly foolish." "You weren't tricked, Chloe," I corrected her quietly. "You were greedy. You saw a man with expensive suits and an arrogant mouth, and you decided he was worth more than 3 years of honest devotion. No. I've always loved you, Ethan," she screamed through her tears, clutching my shoes as if trying to physically anchor herself to my presence. "I swear I love you. I thought about our future every single day. I just wanted us to have a better life. I was trying to climb so we could be happy." "You didn't want us to have a better life," I said, taking a deliberate step backward, forcing her hands to drop to the cold floor. "You wanted status. And when you thought I couldn't provide it, you erased me." "I was scared," she whimpered, her hands shivering against the marble. "I panicked when I saw you near the fountain. I didn't want Carter to judge me." "Do you remember the exact words you said to Carter when I tried to say hello to you 3 hours ago?" I asked, holding her gaze with terrifying, unshakable calm. Chloe froze, her jaw trembling, unable to utter a single word. "I have no idea who he is," I recited smoothly, repeating her own words back to her. "He's probably just a confused fan or some low-level contractor. I don't want trash ruining our night." A fresh wave of horrified tears spilled over her cheeks as she buried her face against the floor. "I'm sorry, Ethan, I'm so sorry, please forgive me." "The man who loved you would have forgiven you anything, Chloe," I said, looking down at her with complete, absolute indifference. "But that man doesn't exist anymore. You threw him away in the lobby tonight. The man standing here now is simply the owner of Vance Enterprises, and he owes you nothing." "Ethan, no," she wailed as Victoria stepped out from the side corridor, tears streaming down her own face as she knelt beside her sister and gently wrapped her arms around Chloe's shaking shoulders. "Come on, Chloe," Victoria whispered softly, her voice filled with deep sadness. "It's over. Let's go home and face this. Ethan, don't leave me." Chloe's hysterical cries echoed off the tall glass walls of the empty lobby as Victoria slowly pulled her to her feet and guided her toward the heavy glass doors leading out into the night. I didn't turn around to watch them leave. I took a deep, clear breath, feeling the heavy burden of 3 years of hidden truth finally lift completely from my chest. "Are you all right, Ethan?" Dr. Ford asked softly, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "I've never been better," I replied, turning back to my mentor and my lead developer. "The past is where it belongs." Maya smiled brightly, extending her hand toward the front exit where our company car waited under the warm city lights. "Shall we go, boss? The future is waiting for us." "Lead the way," I said, walking side by side with my true allies out into the crisp evening air, leaving the shadows behind forever.